Hello and welcome to Escaping Kasterborous, the podcast where myself and my partner Amy rewatch, reminisce and review everything about Doctor Who. My name is Rich and I have kind of already introduced Amy.
Every episode, but that's fine. Hi, I'm Amy.
I still haven't nailed down exactly what I'm going to say.
That's fine. I can be something different every week.
Apart from rewatch, reminisce and review, which I'm quite proud of, but otherwise I've just kind of ad-lib the opening of these episodes. Fine. But welcome to episode 5 of Series 1 of Escaping Kasterborous, where we watch Series 1, Episode 5 of, I was going to say Episode 1, Series 1, Episode 5 of Doctor Who, which was World War III, Part 2 of the first two parts of Series 1, where we were up against the Slitheen race, supposedly, as the Doctor is being electrocuted. For some reason, my mind keeps going to Martha. Why does my mind keep going to... I don't know. What? Harriet Jones and Rose are trapped in a room with Blonde, one of the Slitheen.
Blonde, Fell, Foch.
Blonde, Fell, Foch, Passamere Day, Slitheen. I don't know why I always remember that name, but I do. And Jackie has been cornered by a big jizz-faced police officer who...
Jizz-faced?
Well, watch him do his zip. Watch him do his forehead zip in both parts, and he's proper going, as he's unzipping himself. And he's like,
might as well unzip his pants at the same time.
Calm down. So that's where the Slitheen do it. It's on the forehead, right?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Gross.
I'm sorry if you just tuned into this
Tangent.
and going, I'm not having this. I'm not having this. I've come here to listen about farting aliens. It is Rich talking about Slitheen
jizz.
Slitheen jizz. Oh, God. But yeah, so
anyway,
this is the continuation of Aliens of London. The Slitheen have crashed a ship into the Thames. They've taken over Downing Street, and everyone's dying. Yay.
Oh, good.
So as far as I know, in my own personal picking up of Doctor Who back in 2005, because I don't know whether I've already said this was aired on the 23rd of April 2005. I can't remember.
You have not.
I have not. There you go. 23rd of April 2005, this was aired. This was about the time I actually started watching the series week to week, because I missed the first handful of episodes. Like I said, I didn't... my parents were Doctor Who fans, but they weren't like, oh my God, let's get back on this.
Whoa.
So I sort of picked up on it from here on. This was where I remember starting Doctor Who, because I very vividly remember next week's episode, watching that for the first time, which I'll try my best not to dip into too much, because I'm going to waste all my talking points for next week.
Excited.
But this is about where I picked up on this series. As far as I'm aware, you were already watching, by this point, if you
my
even
sister
remember.
can probably tell you more, because she's old. She's two and a bit years older than me, so she's almost 3 years older than me, so she probably remembers a bit more, because she would have been about 13 at the time. So 12 maybe, I don't know. Anyway, not the point. So she could probably remember a bit more than me as to... Hey Laura, if you listen to this, I don't know whether you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, comment and tell me which, if you remember, or tweet me or something, and I'll mention it in the next episode. Do you remember more about watching Doctor Who as kids than I do? Because you probably do.
The first time we specifically call out a listener, please tell us something that
Laura,
you know, because we know you're here.
Actually, I mentioned her in the first episode as well. I can't remember what I said. I think it was something about the pronunciation of Kasterborous. But anyway, not the point. So, yes, I may have already been watching by this point. I probably was.
But yeah, this is about where I remember watching from. And I don't... Like I said, I can't remember whether I started watching with Aliens of London or specifically World War III, but I know that it was the Slitheen.
It was the Slitheen.
At least. But the way that they introduce the episode is they do the little rundown of what happened, but they don't go previously. Usually in British TV, you have just text that says previously. In American TV, you have the lead character saying previously on this. You have Mark Harmon say previously on NCIS, or you have Zach Braff saying previously on Scrubs. That doesn't happen in British TV. But they play through the events very quickly as to what happened. But rather than doing a previously, here's the cliffhanger, pause, then we go back and we continue what we ended on last week, they actually just lead straight into the resolution of that cliffhanger.
I said when we were watching it, I really enjoy the way that they don't pause after the recap. They literally just go recap into the start of the new episode, which is something like you don't really see it coming. You expect there to kind of be that pause, but actually it works really well because you're sort of, I do remember when we used to watch this and me being sort of like, we've already, okay, the episode, cool. And like the episode's already started and you're like, oh my God, they brought us into the episode really like smoothly. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
The only downside to that is if you know these episodes back to front, like we already do, you might like think to phase out and wait for that pause to be like, here's the cliffhanger, pause. Now here's the resolution to it, and that in that pause you go, oh, hang on, right, I need to pay attention again now. Because if we were both, I mean, we've made it very clear that when we're doing this rewatch, we are like phones down. We're just actually going to sit and watch because as much
we're kind of watching it as if it's the first time a new episode, like whenever a new episode comes out, we always put our phones on silent.
If you're rewatching something on telly or you're rewatching a film, you might have
just background
noise,
isn't it?
Scroll through Twitter or you might be chatting to somebody on Discord or something. Whereas we've actually made the very clear effort to focus,
not do that.
To proper, like, all damn millennials with their tiny attention spans. We are making sure to actually focus on these episodes, and like, thankfully, that was as said that we kind of realized, they just ran straight into it. And there are so many scenes that, like, throughout this episode that you kind of forget even happen. Like, if you try and play back the episode in your head, there are so many lines of dialogue you don't remember. But I think,
oddly, I was thinking that after we watched it, I was thinking like we got towards the end of the episode, and I was genuinely sat there thinking, what actually just happened? Like, I know what happened, like I can tell you what happened, but could I tell you what happened?
Like, have we been watching an extended cut that I've just like missed? There's just there's much more in this than I remember, but lo and behold, though, this is the original broadcast version. But we come back in with the Doctor being electrocuted. He passes it off to the Slitheen. He plugs it into his neck thing, and very conveniently, it affects all of them. And it's
the miraculous joint. What's it?
Hive mind, you said.
That sort of thing. Hive mind type thing of the Slitheen is like, one of us is hurt. We're all hurt.
So, it's a bit of a blunt means of getting out of that scenario. It would have been more interesting to see the Doctor like tear it off, just chuck it and run.
Yeah, but then you get the fabulous setup of the joke.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, the humour, as Amy's already said, actually before we started recording, I mentioned the humour in this episode was a lot more kind of on the point than there are the last couple. Fewer farts this time, which, as we said last week, as two people who very much enjoy a good fart joke, they were a bit overdone in Aliens of London, but now they have been toned down. They've only really been added for either for like to frame an unmasking, or they do it as interestingly as like an establishing a character. Yeah, like when they get towards the end and they have all of the people arriving, all the sort of the more weighty people arriving at Downing Street who all do like she's the head of the boating club, and Andrew Marr's like, what the hell are you doing here?
Scottish people,
and how do we know they're a Slitheen? Oh, they've just walked past. Oh, they've done a little toot. Cool. They're a Slitheen. Watch out. They tone that down a lot, but like, yeah, the humor hits hard. The humor hits so much better because it kicks off with a great joke, which is the Doctor going and getting all the police from downstairs, running back up to the conference room, finding that the general had disguised himself. Resuited, that's the word. And he does the whole, I think you'll find the Prime Minister is an alien in disguise, and the Prime Minister sort of, pulls a face and looks at him. And the Doctor turns to this officer who's just like looking at the Doctor like, what the hell are you on about? And he says, that's never going to work, is it? He's like,
No, it isn't.
It's just...
And he just goes, okay, bye, and like launches himself out the room.
Yeets himself out of there. It's just, the humour lands so much better. So many more fantastic jokes. Even following that straight away is, if you were going to, back up a man against a wall and execute him, one word of advice, ding, don't back up against the lift. And a massive error in terms of reality leaking through. I know you've got aliens running through Downing Street. Not exactly very realistic anyway, but can we just take a moment to realise those lift doors opened and closed way faster
No,
they
but
should have done.
The first time, yes, but he zapped it the second time, so therefore he kind of probably made it go faster because he does use his sonic screwdriver on the door.
With how temperamental elevators or lifts are, I don't think even a Sonic can override them.
Probably not.
Because lifts are crap.
God, they're rubbish.
They're rubbish. Like, in the What Culture offices, our lifts are rubbish. Like, they're terrible. And it's like, it's not even an old building.
But
lifts suck. Lifts suck.
If I've ever known a piece of technology that's more temperamental, it's a lift.
Either it's a printer or a lift or the McDonald's ice cream machine. Like the most temperamental bits of kit in the British Isles. And for some reason, it seems to be that the government are hiding the best lifts from us. So,
yeah, apparently.
Boris, if you're listening, can we have that lift tech?
Some better lifts,
and have it in the What Culture offices, please, because ours are crap. Very strange tangent, but, anything goes on this podcast. So Mickey rescues Jackie from the police officer who's now having a bit of a dance in the kitchen, having a bit of a little squeal, little bit
Comes
of Sparky.
in and smacks him with a chair, doesn't
Comes in and smacks him with a
fabulous.
chair. I love the fact that the Rose and Jackie's flat is just like, do you know what? Screw everything in here. Episode 1, it's like let's put Rose and the Doctor straight through the coffee table, and then let's beat the crap out of Slitheen with a chair.
Which, by the way, you haven't seen a coffee table come back yet, have we? Like, I've not seen another coffee table since that one got broken.
We'll have to check for when we get back to the Powerless State, just to see whether they have replaced that coffee table. But to sort of spur off Jackie and Mickey rescuing Jackie and taking a picture of the Slitheen, something I was saying to Amy before we started recording is the fact that I don't feel like that relationship between Jackie and Mickey in that current state of their lives is explored enough, because if you remember from last week, when Mickey storms into or Mickey appears at the door at the flat when Rose has come back after, bear in mind she's been away for a year, that woman says someone has an apology to make, and Rose says I'm sorry, and she goes, not you. Because it turns out, obviously, Jackie had dobbed in Mickey about potentially murdering her daughter, and Jackie absolutely detests him for it.
Which, despite the fact that it's now been proven not to be true,
well, exactly.
After you've hated somebody for that long, it's kind of difficult to see them in a different light.
Exactly, you might absolutely everyone knows somebody that they've hated so much that they've turned the other cheek and they've come around and they've apologized to you. And yet you can accept an apology and still think, I still hate you. You're still an asshole. And we've all had that experience in our lives. But Jackie never, she kind of apologizes to Mickey, but as far as we're aware, she still hates him, even though he's, borderline saved her from a Slitheen. Even though all he did was hit him with a chair when he was already zapped.
To be fair, though, she wasn't exactly going... if she'd have waited there much longer, which it seemed she was kind of either frozen in fear or just being too stupid to run away, then he would have stopped being zapped, and then he probably would have killed her anyway. So, to be fair, I think Mickey probably did save her life.
But... Oh, yeah, he did. So he takes her to his flat where he's assuming that she's safe, and Mickey's making them a cup of tea. Jackie's like, have you got anything stronger? And he's like, nah, you're not getting pissed. I know what you're like. I know what you're like when you're drunk, but this is no time for a conga.
I love that line.
And Mickey sort of awkwardly hugs her. It's really blatantly awkward hug, and then he sort of spurs off into this whole "oh yeah, but you hate me" thing, and Jackie's like, "oh, but you saved my life," and it's like, okay, but the thing is, we never got to see that supposed seething hate from Jackie to Mickey, and I think as much as I'm not criticizing how the episode played out, I would just like to have seen more of that. Maybe Jackie not necessarily being in denial about what she's seen, as much as they play up the whole event of this two-parter as a hoax to the British public.
Yeah.
Standard government, eh?
But I think the thing with Jackie is because Rose is right in the middle of it, she already knows there's something fishy is going on. The fact that she just disappeared for a year and then randomly just turns up again. It's
not so much that she'd be in denial about what she's seeing. I mean, as in that she'd be uncooperative with Mickey. Mickey comes in, bashes the dude with the chair, takes a photo, tries to get Jackie out of there, and Jackie's like, no, I hate you. I'm going to be uncooperative. Mickey's reading the room as like, look, there's a big bog monster in your kitchen who's trying to kill you. Can we take this baggage and deal with it later on? Like, Jackie just sort of goes along with it. And admittedly, all that is Jackie reading the room as well. And I get that, and that's fine. But I would have liked to have seen this relationship between Jackie and Mickey stay kind of spicy throughout the course of their on-screen time in Doctor Who. I mean, it would die down over time, but in this current moment, like, bear in mind this is a 2-part episode that only takes place over 2 days.
Yeah.
Rose comes back, and literally they are in Downing Street overnight. They're
it's
3 in the morning. It's 3 in the morning in Mickey's flat.
So.
Like, I'd have loved to have seen Jackie still being difficult, because like we've said, if you hated somebody for a year, like you detested someone for a year, and there was some kind of revelation that meant that your reasoning for hating them isn't valid, you wouldn't exactly automatically go click and I'm fine again.
No, I suppose not. But then at the same time, if you've had it proven to you that they're not like who they say they are, like, it wouldn't just dissipate in the space of 12 hours.
No.
But your life is in danger, and realistically, you're sort of like, am I going to go with the person who hasn't actually done anything wrong, or am I going to stay here and be killed?
Oh, no,
so
like
I can
said,
sort of understand like why she doesn't really fight it.
The way that they did it in the episode, I wouldn't say is wrong. Because it's reading the room and realizing there's a better there's a better time and place to do this. But I'm saying, if I had the play to have tweaked something in that episode, I would like to have seen that relationship more. Like, even if when you get to because I think it is Christmas we next see Jackie and Mickey, at least in present day.
Oh, what, with David?
With David, yeah, we don't see him again.
Oh.
I mean, we technically see Mickey and Jackie in Father's Day, but obviously that's not canon. Yeah, that's basically,
not current,
and
Mickey
that's
and
not present
Jackie.
day. But I'd have liked to have seen that relationship continue through to like the Christmas invasion, and seeing them maybe there still being like that little bit of friction, like with the Doctor regenerating and treating Mickey differently. That's a regeneration. That happens. That's a whole change of personality, whereas I would have liked to have seen this continue on more. Yeah,
see, I don't know, because I think it's probably good that they didn't, because, like, towards the end of this episode, you even get that kind of patching up of their relationship start to happen, because obviously Rose has kind of abandoned them both. And, well, I say abandoned them. Obviously, Mickey had the choice to go, but decided not to, which, again, is a fantastic humorous exchange between him and the Doctor, where he says, don't tell Rose, and the Doctor's like, nope, it's my decision. He's not coming.
It's a liability, yeah.
It was Mickey's decision. But you do get sort of like, because obviously Rose says, like, see you in 10 seconds, and Jackie and Mickey stand there and they both count 10 seconds and she doesn't come back, and you get that kind of exchange between them that's like, well, I guess we'll just been abandoned again. And then they head off, and I think that's the kind of point when Jackie probably realizes like they are actually on the same side, and it's like there's no point in hating him, because realistically they've both been left behind. So I can sort of understand why it didn't get continued on. Like, it would have been fine for this episode, I think, because, like you said, it's in the space of, like, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever. But, yeah, I do kind of like the way that she sort of clings onto him as, like, her beacon of, like, please save me, Mickey, oh, my God.
Yeah. But, I mean, comparatively to Aliens of London, World War III is so much more grounded, because they've got all of the establishing of what the hell's going on out the way. We don't know who the Slitheen are. We don't know what they're doing. But we've been introduced to all the characters we need to know. We've been introduced to all the locations we need to know. That's kind of it from there. We now go into the meat of what this episode and what this story is, which is the Slitheen being a family, not a race, which I always find that exchange funny when... Yeah. Like, who are the Slitheen race, and they all just kind of laugh it off, like it's not our species, it's our surname, which is, again, it's a nice little diversion from what we expect it to be. They're still known as the Slitheen, like in all of the promo material, in, like, you know, the Doctor Who encyclopedia. In fact, I think I've got one on my bookshelf. I should probably look and see what they're listed under, but they're known as Slitheen.
Oh, they will be known as Slitheen.
Not as Raxacoricophalopatorium, which is, as far as we know, their actual species name. And they're gonna nuke the hell out of the Earth. That's why they've taken over government. They crashed through Big Ben and crashed into the Thames to make everyone panic. They're going to get the UN to give them missile codes. They're going to start World War III, turn the Earth into a big radioactive crap mess, and then sell it for fuel.
Yeah.
And it's a really brutal, but I think it's a really brilliant story. Just
I really like it.
There's a fantastic exchange when the Doctor and Harriet and Rose make it into the cabinet room, and
after saying, "How do we get out?"
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
About how Blonde says to the Doctor there's a recession up there. And I've always loved that idea that there's always so much going on. Like the standard day-to-day things that we're used to. Like if there's going to be a recession, which in present times there will be. We'll have another one.
Sad face.
Yeah, exactly. Like those kind of things still happen up and out there. Like kind of how we have, we'll get to Satellite 5 in 2 episodes' time, like just a TV station. They're still creating content.
Oh my god, is that 2 episodes' time?
I'm pretty certain.
I thought it was episode 8.
I think it might go Dalek Father's Day Long Game, or Dalek Long Game Father's Day. No, it is Long Game after Dalek, because Adam's there.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But yeah, like seeing the sort of normality that we know, seeing the world, seeing how society works, and seeing that being pushed onto the most ridiculous things, like big green bog monsters who fart themselves to death, saying we need to make a profit because there's a big recession on. Like I love that sort of adding a whimsical flavour to something so normal, which is something Doctor Who does so well.
It just definitely sort of brings it back to something that you can understand as well, because it's like, it's harder to understand that somebody would be wanting to kill the planet just for the sake of killing the planet, like, whereas they're actually doing it for a reason that their family is, they're accustomed to, whether it be wrong or right. That's what they do. They turn planets into profit, and the Earth is just kind of their next target. So it brings it back to something that you can almost empathize with. Obviously you can't, because they're trying to kill the entire human race, but you understand the situation that they must have had to have been in to get to that point. Like as we discussed last week, and as people have been saying in the comments of the video version of the last week's podcast, like people don't see this 2-part story being very good. Like overall, the reception was like meh for it. And, kind of the way it ends, just, let's just blow them up. Screw it. We'll just nuke the hell out of Downing Street. Why not? It's a bit blunt, but like I think the actual Slitheen plotline, the as you said, the reason why they're doing these things, it's understandable. It's why we don't necessarily empathize, whatever, with like Thanos in Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame, but you can understand why he's doing that. I mean, taking out a planet and, 6 billion people, just killing them all just for the sake of profit. Yeah, it's like, it's not the nicest way to go, but they're doing it not because they want to just kill stuff. Like, whereas like the Daleks, they exist to just kill stuff. That's how they're programmed to do things, whereas the Slitheen have a motive to actually do it that benefits them. No, it doesn't benefit the world, whereas like, Thanos snapping away 50% of existence is actually going to help save resources and make life for those remaining 50% better. Provide, like, when you take away the excess baggage of potentially losing loved ones. Otherwise, it's nothing but a benefit. As bad as that sounds, and that's the same thing for the Slitheen. And I think that's something that gets overlooked so much with these creatures, or at least this 2-parter, is the fact that you don't take a look at that position they're in, and you have that moment to realize that you understand why they're doing it. And that's there
why
is a
it's
reason.
interesting.
It's not just for the sake of it. I actually preferred this part to the last part. I think, like you said, because the last part was very introduction to everything. It was kind of like, why is this happening? It set up all the questions, which obviously a good 2-parter needs to kind of do. It needs to set up all the questions, have a cliffhanger, and then everything gets answered in the second part. But I preferred the pacing of this episode. I think like the fact that it's quite static, really. I mean, you have that fantastic kind of Scooby-Doo chase scene in the middle, which is like them running across a room. And despite the fact that the Slitheen that's chasing them is much, much faster than them, somehow they escape.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's all just kind of like the pacing of them being in the static room for, I'd say, a good 70% of the episode they're in that room for.
Yeah.
It all just kind of works, like, because there's enough action going on outside, it sets it up really nicely. But also I love the dialogue between the three of them. I think as a triplet, is that the right word?
Trio,
there you go. As a trio, they bounce off each other really well. I mean, obviously we know the Rose and the Doctor bounce off each other really well anyway, but throw in Harriet Jones, MP for Flydale North, in there means that she's kind of like, I mean, as the Doctor says, she's really good at this. So it's kind of like, you know, she kind of enhances the dynamic of being stuck in that room.
Yeah.
But yeah, I preferred this episode.
Yeah, the sequence of them being in the cabinet room, because like you said, we only really jump between Downing Street across various rooms and Jackie's flat and Mickey's flat. That's basically what we see in this episode. That dialogue, like you said, they have inside that room, they don't have much flashy stuff. Like, it's all... At the end of the day, it's all exposition. It's all talking about what's going on and how they're going to get out of this, and exploring the relationships between the Doctor and Rose, the Doctor and Jackie, Rose and Jackie, Rose and Mickey, the Doctor and Mickey. Like, it's literally...
The Doctor and Jackie.
Yeah, webbing them all together and actually making stuff interesting. And we've seen how you can do exposition wrong. You literally just look at series 11 and 12.
Look, what's that?
Here's an essay. Everyone sit down.
My God.
Let me explain to you what's going on.
I see something happening.
But it's like seeing that, seeing the process of the Doctor's brain being put forward into the episode, like being put into the forefront, given the spotlight. That's always fun, and that's the thing that I felt was missing so much throughout the course of series 11 and 12. Instead of having to try and like for the writer to explore dialogue and go, okay, where's the Doctor's mind going? Where are these things coming from? You look at something like Sherlock, and they do that visually with the Mind Palace sequences, which are fantastic. Yeah. Doctor Who, they just kind of, all they do, like if you go back, I mean, obviously we're going to get to series 11 and 12 eventually, but if you watch series 11 and 12, go back through and just count how many times there's a pause, and then you see Jodie do that face and go,
yeah,
oh yes, it's that. It's like, stop doing that. Don't that doesn't give us any kind of excitement. Just that realization of that happening. Give us the process of getting to that point. Sherlock does the Mind Palaces, which is basically just a big sort of self-wank in the production department of look at how cool we can make this look. Whereas in Doctor Who, it's all about dialogue, and that's something I've always found missing. So when Mickey and Jackie are back in Mickey's flat, they're on the phone to the Doctor, and there's always these discussions about what's going on and how they can beat this. And then obviously the policeman turns up again, breaks down the door, gets into the kitchen, seems to love the kitchen, that Slitheen, and it's a moment of, right, we need information, we need to work out where these guys are from. So they
this
is
my favourite scene.
Yeah, they just start relaying stuff about what they know. They're green.
I love how quick fire it is. I love the way that Rose is just kind of like, the green, they do this, they do that, and it's like that fantastic kind of literally Eccleston not moving a single muscle. He's literally just kind of stood at the table going, narrows it down, narrows it down, narrows it down. I said, and it's like he's not taking the piss out of anything they're saying. He's not like saying, no, that's stupid. What are you saying to me this for? Literally, she goes, they're green. And he goes, actually, yeah, that narrows it down. And it's sort of like, you know, they keep like firing things. I honestly, it's always been one of my favourite scenes. I've always quite loved because you get to see the process in action of like his information. Here's where his brain is sort of trying to work it out, which is something that I feel like it was kind of prevalent in Eccleston, Tennant, Smith kind of era of like seeing their like thought process of like trying to work stuff out, of like leaving the audience more in the dark about the solution or like the kind of thing before it's explained, which is also something they do with the missile in this episode, is they don't really tell you what they're doing until it happens, and then you see it happen and you come to the realization at the same time as like Mickey and Jackie, for example. But yeah, no, that scene where they're like, and then when he realizes, well, actually, Harriet Jones is the one that points out, isn't she, that the farts smell like something different, and that's the point
that's the final nail in knowing where they're from.
But then the doctor shouts, "They're Rex Falcipatorius," and then Mickey goes, "Oh great, we'll write him a letter." I just find that so funny.
That's something my little brother has always loved in that episode. He always would talk about the fact that he loved that line so much from Mickey. "Oh, that's great, we'll write him a letter." Like, it's such a pointless, stupid line.
But
and
I
it's
love
like,
it.
But
Because
obviously,
it's such a British way to just be sarcastic when
when you're on the other end
happen.
of the phone, and there's this thing breaking down the wall, and it's like, oh, cool, we know where they're from. And like Mickey's there thinking, how the hell is that going to help? And you realise, obviously, the Doctor is a genius. He knows everything, and he's going to tell you what they need to do. But yeah, seeing that process going, like just as you said, having the Doctor saying, narrow it down, narrows it down, narrows it down, narrows it down. That is more than enough to keep us in the loop as to what the Doctor's mind's doing. Like I said, just doing the whole like oh thing. I mean, there are obviously David Tennant says "oh" a lot, but he always goes and like explains what happens when he has those moments. Whereas, like I said,
I feel like Matt Smith doesn't really
quite
quite do it as much. Like Matt Smith doesn't really explain things as much as David and Eccleston did. Like Eccleston's is very kind of build up to the solution at the same time as you realising it as they realise it. David was kind of like being one step ahead but always explaining it. And then Matt Smith kind of comes in and he's like literally about 50 steps ahead until the very last step when you suddenly have to go, oh, wait, this is the solution? And that's like how it evolved.
In that era of the show, 2010, was when the show like properly exploded across the pond, and even then just across the world. And I think it's because there was that expectation that people knew the Doctor was good. Like, how many times has the Doctor in the new series said, "I am very good, I am very clever because I'm brilliant," etc., etc. We know that they're clever. So because the audience knew that, because the writers knew that the audience already know how clever the Doctor is, it almost feels like a free pass to go, but in that case, I don't need to explain what they're doing. The Doctor just knows. And that's why that kind of thing gets skipped over. It doesn't, like, that whole sequence of narrows it down, doesn't tell me that the Doctor is thick. It tells me that he's so much more clever, but he's not going to be just an easy plot to find. He's not going to turn into the sonic screwdriver and just work in that situation. Whereas having that whole process of working out who they are, it helps so much to establish the Doctor as a clever character, because it's kind of the first time you get to see that kind of thing happen.
Yeah,
like,
that's
you
what I
see
was
him
gonna
scanning
say.
stuff with the sonic and like hacking into doors and things to open things up on platform 1 and blah 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 blah.
It's
but
fine,
seeing his
but
actual brain work is really cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is this is the first time you kind of actually get to understand that level of intelligence that the Doctor has, because he's like, that narrows it down to 5,000 and something planets or whatever it is he says. Which is like, how the hell do you know about 5,000 planets that these people could potentially be from? And that's the kind of like expansive knowledge that you see then the Doctor has, and it's like, oh, this guy is actually very, very like well established, like really clever, like, and yeah, like you said, it's a demonstration of that for the first time for us.
I know we're still sitting on this sequence, but it's like, if I took that sequence or something like that and put it into series 11, 12 or 13, that would be something that would just happen amidst nothing. It would just be a case of, okay, class, the Doctor says, what do we know about these guys? Let's work out who they are. But obviously this is framed up against the fact that there is, okay, fam, all right, fam, what's happening? This is framed up against the tension of Mickey and Jackie seeing their deaths. So the expositional side of it, like, they get to the fact they're from Rex Falcipatorius really, really easily. Like, it's added into the sort of the thought base of the audience really well. It's really smoothly added in. Yeah. And playing it up against that kind of thing. Everything's moving while this information is being relayed. Which is something the music
also does really well.
Yeah, it all helps. But obviously this is something that later series get wrong. They just add this in because it's like, okay, people want to know who this thing is, where it's from, what backstory it has. It's kind of the beauty of Doctor Who, is that you can go and you can read up on these creatures from the TV appearances, from the novels, from the comics. You can find out so much more about these things. The audio dramas as well add so much to the background of these characters and these aliens. And they managed to keep all of that going while the events of the episode play out. There's no pauses to go, okay, let's take a moment to remember who we have just killed or who we are fighting. And it's one of the biggest strengths of that episode. So
yeah, definitely. Like,
to sort of wrap around to the sort of opening of this kind of point, yeah, this is a definitely better part than part 1. than Aliens of London. It's so much better paced, and it does so much to introduce the character. And as we said, this is only episode 5 of the series. Like, we know the Doctor back to front because we've been watching him for 15 years, but new people may not, and they continue to
if you look at
add...
it from like a new perspective,
yeah,
it definitely, like you were just about to say, I presume it continually adds to the Doctor's character, and you're sort of building him up like piece by piece so that you're getting to know who this character is, which actually I think is kind of a shame as to why the fact that Eccleston only lasted 1 series, because he builds up this Doctor's character so well as like his moral standpoint. I mean, his moral standpoint is touched on again in this episode when he gives is it Blomfelfoch, the woman, when he says, like, I'll give you a chance. You either leave this planet or I stop you. Yeah. It's that, like, it touches again on that moral standpoint of, like, I will give you a chance, but I will give you 1 chance and 1 chance only. If you do not take it, that's your chance up. And he built, like, Eccleston's Doctor is so well built and well created throughout this entire series. And he is, like, kind of, you know, I mean, he had such a big job to do being the return of Doctor Who in 2005. He does such a good job of it. And then, like, you get to the end of the series and you've just kind of got to know this wonderful relationship between him and Rose and this brilliant character. And he left, which, like, you know, I completely understand his reasons for leaving. And David, obviously, you know, if we hadn't got David, like, you know, things might have been really different. But he builds up this character and he creates the Doctor who we all know and love. And without him, he wouldn't have existed. And I think it's just, like, a fantastic kind of thing that he has done, and the way that he does, like, the writing kind of, like, does that as well. Like, Eccleston's job was to kind of reintroduce and make the Doctor be this kind of, like, make the public fall in love with Doctor Who again by creating the new Doctor, and I think he did a fantastic job. So yeah, it's a shame he had to leave, but then at the same time,
But in the process of going back through this series, like, it just further reaffirms that he is my favourite Doctor by quite a long stretch. Like, I love Tennant to pieces. He's definitely in second place for me. But yeah, there's so much more about Eccleston that I just adore, which we will get to because we'll probably do a series recap.
I mean, we were saying
when we get round to the end of the episode, end of this series on this podcast, but we'll cover that more specifically.
Because we watched Doctor Who Confidential, didn't we, after this episode?
We made sure to watch it this
last week. And unfortunately, the ones on the DVD are only, like, cut down versions, so they're not, like, huge. But Eccleston was in the Confidential episode, and I turned to you, didn't I? And I went, he's, like, strangely attractive, isn't he? Like, he's got this cheeky little smile, and he's just got this kind of, like, alluring personality. And I just sat there and I was like, I can get behind this.
Oh God,
not in that way, don't you dare twist that.
But no, you're right. But enough about the Doctor, enough about Rose, enough about Harriet going on about the Slitheen. Let's actually talk about the Slitheen, because I know we sort of discussed them a bit last week, but we had a question on the podcast, on the video version of the podcast on YouTube, from JB, not Josh Brown, but another JB, unless it is Josh Brown, in which case, oh my God, why did you not tell me you've watched Doctor Who? But they ask, do you think the Slitheen were done better in Doctor Who or in the Sarah Jane Adventures? Now, I didn't watch much of the Sarah Jane Adventures. Obviously, after she was reintroduced into Doctor Who in Series 2, which we will get to eventually, they then, Russell T Davies was then given the spin-off series to do on CBBC, which actually continued into Matt Smith's era before Elizabeth Sladen sadly passed away. But the Slitheen appeared a couple of times. I just had a quick look on the TARDIS wiki as to when exactly they appeared. But the Slitheen family themselves are obviously a branch of the Slitheen that came to Earth, because surprisingly, they don't make it out. And they're also the Blatherine.
Blatherine?
All right. Yeah, Blatherine is another family of Raxacoricophalopatorians that appear in Sarah Jane Adventures.
Okay, fair.
But obviously they wanted to bring them back and not have to use the Slitheen family again, because the idea is that obviously they are a small portion of a species. It's almost like the Cult of Skaro appearing in every Dalek episode, rather than just having another bunch of Daleks. Like, have a different branch of them, etc., etc. But so in terms of how they were in SJA versus in Doctor Who, I couldn't really answer that because I've not really watched enough. But we did sit and we watched a couple of clips on the Sarah Jane Adventures YouTube channel, because
I've never watched
the BBC have been pushing their Doctor Who, Sarah Jane Adventures and Torchwood YouTube channels. They're actually giving them some real thought at the moment. Suddenly they've all just woken up again. So we watched a handful of clips on that because they appeared in series 1 of Sarah Jane Adventures quite early on, actually. And as much as the Sarah Jane Adventures didn't air like that much later, it was 2008, I think, or 2007. So 2007 was the first. I think that's the first Slitheen episode. It seems to be was 2007.
Yeah.
The improvements they had were actually quite staggering.
I mean,
in terms of production, even though this is only 2 years after they first appeared in Doctor Who.
We were watching the clip, and I said, the CGI for them taking off the like prosthetics and the costumes and stuff, because on the Confidential they obviously showed you like the full kind of body prosthetic that they make when they're undressing, so to speak. The CGI of them actually coming out of the bodysuit was much better. Like, it didn't have that weird kind of like squishy, non-formed head. Like, it was a fully formed kind of head that popped out the top of this human suit, which I thought was much, much better, which is amazing considering it was only 2 years later.
And to think because it's a kids' TV show, the budget would have obviously, being Sarah Jane Adventures, obviously since the BBC commissioned it, they knew what they were getting into. They were going to get in for as much as it is more grounded because there's no alien worlds. It all takes place in is it like Ealing where she lives?
I have no idea.
I can't remember, but I think it is London Way. I want to say again. I don't know SJA that well, but they knew they were going to give them the budget for it, and the CGI has its moments, but the unsuiting process did look better. But I think that's down to the fact that they'd obviously already had practice with doing it in Doctor Who, and then obviously they already had the baseline there as to how they were doing it before, so they had more time. I know that it was 2005, refine it.
But I didn't mind the CGI in this episode. Like, it was okay.
Again, the jankiness of that, it's down to TV CGI back then. Like, as much as you can have films like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings in the early noughties that look phenomenal even by today's standards, that's a whole different kettle of fish in terms of budget and companies behind that kind of thing. But they're not bad in Doctor Who at all. But the only thing that I didn't like about the Slitheen, at least the characterization of the Slitheen in the Sarah Jane Adventures clips we watched, is how borderline... insane might be too far to
psychotic
put it. Yeah, psychotic maybe. Like, as said earlier about the fact that the policeman in Doctor Who is like proper having one when he's unzipping his forehead. He's going for it. In the Sarah Jane Adventures, when you see them unmasking, they're doing their forehead zips. They're like well into it.
They're having a whale of a time.
And I get that it's a kids show, and I get that you need to dial it up a bit more because you've watched kids TV. You know how actors and presenters are on kids TV. But it's toned up so much further than I think it needs to be. I think the idea of the sort of the silliness of the human form Slitheen, like we've already seen in Aliens of London, more so than World War III with all the fart jokes and things. Like, they didn't need to dial that up any further, but they did. And like, when you're watching them unmask, and the kid's suit is dreadful. It
really
looks
bad.
awful.
The one kid at the end that we watched, the child who was playing the school
Slitheen
kid.
Yeah.
So the child who was playing the school kid that transforms into a Slitheen, the Slitheen or the Blatheen or whoever they are.
It's a Slitheen, I think.
Was smaller.
It's like half the size of it.
Was like half the size of the kid originally playing the part, and it's like, isn't the point that they're bigger and they need these suits to like fit? Like, you can't stretch.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, but like the characterization of the masked Slitheen just seemed a bit too over the top. Again. You could always argue it's Doctor Who / Sarah Jane Adventures, the Whoniverse stuff. It's gonna be over the top.
Yeah.
But I think it was a bit too dialed up. Like, watching them unmask, and they're like, again, like, you see this father do it, and he's like, again, he's doing the policeman. He's having a proper O face, and then the mother is also like really going for it. Same with the kid.
Face.
An O face. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
The only thing that I think is better than Doctor Who with the Slitheen in Sarah Jane Adventures is the suits. Because they're still made by Millennium Effect, same people who did the ones in Doctor Who. But again,
I don't know. I think the ones in the Sarah Jane Adventures, from the few short clips we watched, whether they've been like sort of more saturated for the purpose of like uploading or the TV or whatever, but I think they look a bit more fake than the ones in
they do
Doctor Who.
Look a bit more fake. But
They're
the
brighter.
difference is, but with the fact that they obviously would have had different budgets, you don't see, in the clips we saw at least, we didn't see any CGI Slitheen, whereas obviously when they're running around Downing Street, you cut to these very they're even more muted, like darker coloured Slitheen as they run. They look almost like brown than green. In the Sarah Jane Adventures, they didn't seem to have that ability to get the CGI ones in, at least. Again, correct us if we're wrong in the clips, but they had the actors in the Slitheen suits actually running around. So see, with the Millennium Effects already having all these casts and molds and stuff that they had for the last Slitheens, assuming these aren't the same costumes, which we're not sure whether they are, they would have had the chance to make them more durable and meant that they could actually run around in them. Because again, I'm pretty certain I remember this being in the original Confidential, because obviously, like we said, the ones on the Blu-rays are the cut down ones, which is a real shame. But they weren't, because they're so big, they're like 8 feet tall, with like electronics and stuff in the head, and then like pulley systems and whatever in the arms. Like they're not going to be good to run around in, whereas it seems to be they could do in the Sarah Jane Adventures. But that's kind of all we can really say. Like, we can't discuss the characterization more. We can't discuss the motives they have. I wish we could as well, but I never got into Sarah Jane Adventures as much as I watched it, because I was in the mood for more Doctor Who as a kid, of course. But I found the Sarah Jane Adventures too childish. I didn't like it when Doctor Who was airing, and it felt like it was being more accommodating. I wanted Doctor Who to scare me, hence why I love Series 1 so much, because it scared me so much.
I think I remember vaguely trying to watch Sarah Jane Adventures, like you said, because I remember kind of how the story of how she ended up with Luke.
Yes.
And so, like, I must have tried to watch it at some point, but like you said, I never really got into it. It was never something that I particularly, like, stuck around for, because Doctor Who had me a bit, like, in its clutches more than the Sarah Jane Adventures did. And, yeah, I think it was because it was that just slightly more adult, like, you know, it was something we could watch as a family, whereas Sarah Jane Adventures is obviously catered to
It's definitely
young
catered
kids.
to kids, yeah.
And although we were young kids, I mean, you know, we were 9 years old, I've always been, not to toot my own horn, but I've always been fairly mature for my age. So I think, like, having that kind of more adult, like, series that was still family friendly, but was just much more kind of engaging than the Sarah Jane Adventures, I think was why I didn't really stick around to watch it that much.
Yeah. It's why I pushed on to Torchwood when I could. When I got myself a cheap ass digibox from Argos. For my bedroom TV, so I could watch the repeats of Torchwood on BBC Three, and what a mistake that was, because obviously when Torchwood, I think Torchwood was 2007 as well. I want to say,
was it that early?
I think so, because bear in mind Torchwood was first introduced in 2006 in Series 2. No, it was actually aired on 2006 as well, but I think it was later. It must have been later in the series, obviously, because I think Torchwood, the TV series, takes place after the fall of Torchwood 1 at the end of Series 2. Mm-hmm. But I moved straight onto that, and obviously that is like a big jump in terms of Doctor Who.
That's brave.
Sorry?
That was brave as a kid.
It was brave, and it terrified me. Cyberwoman, like not the actual Cyberwoman herself, but the part at the beginning with the Asian doctor who turns up and is like half upgraded on the floor with the panel over his eye and the pole sticking out of his head. I was, 2007, I'd have been 12 years old?
Yeah, about 11-ish.
Scared the crap out of me. Like, God, no. We obviously, like we said this last week, we rewatched Torchwood because we talked about Tosh last week. Rewatching Torchwood, going back to Greeks bearing gifts? No. It's the fairy tale, the kid with the fairies. I can't remember what the episode's called.
Oh, that one,
going into Countryside, the one with the sadistic villagers.
Cannibals.
The cannibals. That was, even watching them now, we're both 25. No. Like that was terrifying. Mm-mm. And like seeing that when I was 12, like that kind of approach to Doctor Who, that was what I wanted. I wanted the show to scare me.
Oof.
As much as I'm not someone who outwardly goes out of my way to watch horror things or scary things, I wanted the show to push those boundaries.
Yeah.
Which Sarah Jane Adventures would never do. No. Hence why I never went into it. So, JB, that's sort of your answer.
I think thanks for your question.
Thank you. Yeah, the physicality of the Slitheen in Sarah Jane Adventures was definitely, like, the actual creatures themselves was better, but the characterization, I think, is better in Doctor Who. Again, motives, we can't say, but we've kind of already spoken about motives. So thank you, JB, for that question. If you do have any questions regarding the episodes that will be upcoming in this podcast, obviously throughout the course of Series 1 and beyond, if you know we're going to be watching, say we're going to be watching Dalek this next weekend, If you've got any questions about Dalek, you want to drop on the comments of this video, or you can tweet them at us at WhoCulture using the hashtag Escaping Kasterborous. We can find it then. Then you can ask us these questions. We'll answer them on the podcast, as we have already done. So thank you, JB, for that.
One thing that I do want to mention, talking about motivation and characterization and stuff, is what was the woman's name who played Blomfeld? Is it Anita something? It came up in The Confidential, and I forgot to.
Blomfeld Foch, Past Me a Day, Slitheen was played by, I was about to say Margaret Blaine. No, that's her. That's who she is.
Yeah.
Annette Badland.
Annette Badland. She's a fantastic actress, and there's one scene where just before the Doctor, just after they've locked themselves in the cabinet room, and the Doctor realises what they're going to do with the nuclear missiles after Mickey's played them the speech through the TV and all that jazz.
Yeah.
When he opens the door to talk to Margaret, and he is speaking to her, and that bit when he says, I'll give you a chance, you leave or I stop you, her facial expression is one of the things that I always think is so well done, because she goes from kind of derivative, like humorous, or almost sort of being like, you think you're gonna stop us, with her face, and then he goes, yeah, me, and it's literally like the simplest change, but you see her face in like minuscule ways go from I'm so confident to, oh my god, he might actually be able to stop us.
Yeah, there is this realization. And she does this
really, really minute change in her face, which goes from like humorous disgust to like fearful disgust, and it's like, what, like, oh, I just love her facial expressions, and I think she does such a good job of portraying that like emotional like change in like that few seconds when the door is closing on her. You see her face just get more and more contorted with like rage, and it's like, oh,
rage, fear, and all sorts. That's I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. Hit teasers,
spoilers.
hints. But regarding that particular scene, I was going to mention this because I was sort of hoping you'd talk about that kind of point in the show, in the episode, because it's a really dumb thing for me to notice, and it's a really dumb thing to talk about. But it's a bit of a strange continuity error in the fact that when the Doctor first does the whole spiel about these are about the 4 safest wards in Great Britain, flicks the light switch, press this button, the doors close, like bang, 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 bang. They all close.
Oh, they close down and then they close sideways.
No. They always close. They always close sideways on the main door. It's the window ones that close downwards. But when they're having this talk and there is that sort of staring contest, like you said, and Margaret's starting to look a little less confident, the doors close slowly. And yet, whenever they press the button, they just go bang and they close. Whereas,
of course.
Again, it's all just there to heighten the tension, to really frame that scene of this is a proper staring contest, and the only thing that's going to break it is literally like 5 inches of steel. But just for some reason, at that point, the doors just close really slowly.
Decide to close slowly. It would have been really funny if you just see her face and it just goes poof poof in the middle.
Again, they didn't, as much as they could have easily just slid in a fart joke because there's like 4 Slitheen stood there. Like, they didn't do that, thankfully. But I've always found that kind of interesting that they played up on like that a practical thing, like that you'd assume. I know obviously it's probably just some 2 blokes pushing the bits of wood together,
probably.
But they really play up on changing up the sort of formula of how things work just to heighten the tensions. There's lots of little things in this episode that you can play up on as being really good, like we've already discussed, like the characterization of them, the motivations they have. The way that they talk about the way we've already spoke about the Doctor's intellect and how they push that through to the audience. But sort of skipping towards the end of it, because again, a lot of it's very expositionary. We've sort of talked about all these things that we've explored so far. They want to nuke everything. They're waiting on the call from the UN to get the codes to nuke the mothership that's supposedly in the sky. We then skip to the end of just the Doctor getting Mickey to hack into UNIT and then into the Navy.
Cash.
To just blow Downing Street to smithereens.
And it's realistically, if you were a secret government army organisation, you would not use the same password for every entry point, would you? Buffalo.
I mean, yeah, that's digging in a little bit too much with the reality of the situation. But I like the idea that because you see Mickey on the UNIT website, like the Doctor knows these things still about UNIT, even though he's not worked with them for however long. I don't really remember when UNIT were last seen in Doctor Who. Like, I don't know whether much of the 7th Doctor adventures had anything to do with UNIT. I might have to look this up. I genuinely don't know.
I don't know.
I know they were very prevalent throughout the 70s. more so than anything else. And again, we see them later on. Series 4 is when they kind of come back in full force in Doctor Who. But yeah, I just thought, as much as it's a plan that works, because it's like, unless the Doctor blows up Downing Street, killing all the Slitheen and most likely themselves, everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
And there's, the wonderful thing with between the Doctor and Rose and Jackie of the Doctor saying, "I can save the world but lose you," which is one of the best lines in the series, I think. One of the most iconic lines that
other than "Do you mind not farting while I'm saving the world?"
Other than "Do you mind not farting while I'm saving the world?" And it leading to just, let's just blow the crap out of everything. It is quite abrupt. You do get a good bollocks joke right at the end. Which obviously as a kid I had no idea why that was funny. And my dad watched it and he was like, "It's funny." I'm like, what Dad, why is it funny? And he's like, "Oh, he was going to say bollocks." "Oh, okay. Sure."
Why is that funny? Yeah, sure.
Obviously nowadays I'm more like, "Oh yeah, bollocks is a great word. I say it a lot." But the ending is a bit blunt. And I think it's that sort of, the big green bog monsters, because the Slitheen aren't exactly a unique design. Like, if you take the stereotypical alien Area 51, you just make it a bit fatter and a bit
basically.
fartier, and you've got a Slitheen. You've got the fart jokes, and you've got the resolution of them just blowing the hell out of Downing Street, and it frames the episode as like, it's a bit bleh. And I kind of agree. Overall, it's not the most memorable.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of forget that these episodes are, like, I don't forget that they're a thing, but like you said, we watched the whole episode and I sort of went back and went, what just happened? Like, other than a few chase scenes, some chatting and an explosion. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy the episode when I'm watching it, and all the kind of scenes between that, like we've discussed in the cabinet room, they're all really good. But the conclusion is, let's hide in a cupboard and survive. It's like it feels like there's no real threat. Like, he says, "I could save the world but lose you," and he's like to Jackie, "I can't guarantee that your daughter will be safe," and all that jazz. And then you get the wonderful scene from Harriet being like, "As the only elected MP in this room, I order you to do it."
Yeah.
But it's sort of, Rose just kind of goes, "Yeah, I'm going to ride it out in a cupboard." And then the cupboard scene, which is wonderful, just tumbling over of the camera, and whoever the cameraman was for that scene just having a whale of a time going with the camera. And it just kind of feels like they were always going to survive. Like, that whole scene of the Doctor saying, "I could lose you," there's no threat of them potentially not surviving.
Obviously, they play upon Harriet Jones being important because the Doctor keeps saying, "Harriet Jones, why do I know that name?" But could you imagine how bleak it would have been if they got out of the rubble and realised that Harriet didn't make it?
Yeah.
Like, as much as we come to like her, because like we said last week, she's she's very annoying in Aliens of London. She's just this annoying person, but she really, when she understands the situation, she becomes so much more useful. The Doctor says, "You're good at this, aren't you?"
Yeah, she's not too bad in this episode. She's
once she's under pressure, she's not buckling as much as we see her buckle last week when she realizes that they're creatures inside a skin suit, and she starts to cry. She's evolved so far, and obviously we know we're going to see her again later on. But imagine the bleakness if she just didn't make it. It would have made. I think it would have put a bit of a harder sort of stab to the audience after this episode, because obviously all these people who've been taken over by Slitheen, they all died. With the Prime Minister's killed off, the assistant, that's the word I was looking for, is killed off as well. But it's another sort of everybody lives story.
Yeah, it is a bit.
And as much as we get to see more of Harriet Jones and where she goes, and we see this sort of downfall and a reascension of her character as the series progress, it maybe would have added that bit more to it, because as we've done today, we just picked apart loads of bits and pieces, loads of little things that are so good about this episode, or this serial in particular, these two parts. But then it's framed in such a way that people forget it, and it's a shame. Like, I'm excited because I know what's coming up next week. Yeah,
me too.
Which is one of my favourite episodes of Doctor Who ever next week. So coming into these ones, it's like, cool, yeah, we'll get through this.
Yeah, it's a bit. It's kind of a bit like.
I think that's the best thing about getting to do this podcast, is we can dig into this and look into more about what we've never appreciated before. reminds me of doing a media exam when I was in sixth form. We had
to pick everything apart piece by piece.
We had to pick everything apart, but we were literally given a clip from Last of the Time Lords in Series 3.
Nice.
Of the Master on the Valiant, and then them teleporting away to see then you see all the rockets he's built and stuff like that. We had to analyse that, and that's kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
So that's why I really enjoy doing this and going back through, and it's doing is reaffirming to me how much I love Eccleston's Doctor. So, yeah. Would you change your ranking of this episode after watching it again, Ames, or do you think it sort of stays as whatever?
Like you said, it's sort of like I don't really remember watching it for the first time. Like maybe I do a little bit, but I don't really know if I particularly had like Doctor Who is one of the things where I don't particularly go through it and think. At the time when I'm watching it, I might think, yeah, this isn't such a great episode, but I never particularly watch anything except for series 11 and 12, but we'll get to that. Anything that is awful. Like, you know, even, oh my God, what's the episode called?
Love and Monsters.
Even Love and Monsters isn't awful. Like, it's trash, but it's good trash.
It's not Orphan 55 trash.
Yeah, exactly. It's not awful. But I don't really know that I wouldn't rank it I would rank it higher than last week's episode, but I wouldn't particularly rank it anywhere significant. Yeah. Like, it's just kind of an episode.
I think that's something we need to do when we get to the end of the series, and we'll do a series recap at the end of each series of the show, and we talk about what was explored. We talk about the end of a Doctor's era, if it's series 1, series 4, series 7, series 10. And then we work out a ranking between us as to how we would
rank each episode.
How we'd rank the series. At the
I
end
think
of the
that's a good idea.
This is a What Culture Property. We list things, so we're gonna do that, I think. But that about wraps it up for World War III. Yet another hour talking about big farty green monsters, which, funnily enough, quite a few people in the comments were talking about the fact they get another hour of Slitheen, which is good. But thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed today. If you do have any questions regarding this episode, or more usefully next week's episode, Dalek,
yes.
Please do let us know in the comment section below if you're on the video version of this podcast. If you are listening to this on whatever podcast form you're on, you can tweet us at WhoCulture using the hashtag escaping Kasterborous. You can follow me on Twitter at pickupchangetoe, and you can follow Amy
at Ames_Elizabeth.
Again, using hashtag escaping Kasterborous means we can find it a bit easier, or at least we'll know that you're wanting your question to be answered on the old podcast. But thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week for, as said, probably my favourite episode of the entire series.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. Prepare for a 3-hour podcast, folks. Until then, have a great week.
Goodbye.
We'll see you then.
Bye.